Welcome to our next adventure with Chemology 411, a podcast about anything and everything. Kim and her guests will take you behind the scenes, behind the story, or behind the bar. So sit back. Make sure your seatbelt is fastened, tray table in its upright position, all carry-ons stored under the seats. But for this adventure, electronic devices must remain on, as we are ready to take off on our next adventure. Introducing Kim Schultz and Chemology 411.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 35 of Chemology 411. We've got quite a few things that we're going to talk about tonight. And of course, last week we talked, and Tyson had to come up with a happy topic, and he came... And he came up with adoption. And so you're going to get to find out exactly what adoption and Tyson have in common. My name is Kim Schultz, and I'm your adventure coordinator for this show. Let's say hi to my co-host, Tyson Harley.
Hello, here we are again, back in real person for what, the third or fourth time in a row?
Oh, yes.
And, oh my gosh. Don't tell the leaders, but we just physically fist bumped again.
You know what? We're getting back into phases now. So, I mean, I still want us to social distance, but I'm not exactly sure how long we're going to do, like, how long that's going to really last. Like, if people are really doing it or not.
People are, you mean like in their
like
own
if they're
home?
really, at the real house.
Yeah,
like people that they're hanging around, I don't think they're social distancing.
So yeah, adoption, it's going to be fun. And now it sounds like, well, I think it was maybe supposed to be goofy. It's not goofy. It's just like a positive message as opposed to, you know, all this junk. So right. Shall we jump into... Yes, let's jump into Tyson's Quick Hits. Quick hit number one. I've got really good analysis over on my Facebook page around this whole situation. We're being a little serious now. We're going to get to that more light topic later. Anyway, it's new numbers on this COVID situation. It's from a group called FREAGIN, which is the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity. And they're described as a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank that conducts original research expanding economic opportunity to those who least have it. So these people have done research based on some data that the states have to give out, all that categorization that the states have to do for their COVID cases. And the article you can find to go along with this is nursing homes and assisted living facilities account for 42% of COVID-19 deaths. It's got some May 7th data, but also some of the data is updated as of June 1st. So it's what we've been talking about in previous episodes, and I've done one in Scales of Truth where I talked about it. They analyze, like I said, the state-by-state COVID-19 fatality reports, some highlights. They're looking at 2 of the 5 categories when they say 42% of COVID-19 deaths are in nursing homes and assisted living. 2 of the 5 categories of, quote, long-term care, you probably heard that ballied about. They're talking about nursing homes and residential care communities, sometimes referred to as assisted living facilities. They're not talking about the category of adult day service centers, home health care, or hospices. Highlights some sample state data. In Ohio, and this is data as of 6/1, so just a few days ago. Now, that's granted, it's reported, but that's about as early as you can get it. Ohio, 70.5% of all COVID deaths are of people who are in those facilities. California, 43.5. Kansas, 51.2. Minnesota, 81.4. Louisiana is even 39.9. It was one of the lower numbers. North Dakota, 77%. Now, what I did was do some numbers, and you'll see that on the slideshow, that says 15.42 times as many deaths have occurred as reported by 513 among those 65 and older than those younger. 15.42 as many times deaths. So when you and I have said that this is not generally fatal,
right?
Now, if you get it, you're going to know it, like a bad flu. But it's so true. 15 more times more deaths, and you have to remember that's not even more likely to die because those older are a smaller segment of the population than all those people that are 64 or younger, right? So there's been some work done. Those age groups, 65 and older, 65 times as likely to die. I actually think that might be a typo. Go look on my slide on that. I might have typoed it when I wrote it here. But regardless, then I did one other number, and I show you the math there. 1,578 times as many deaths among those 65 and older as among 24 and older. McFly, this is not generally fatal. So that's good work there. And thus, you'll also see in that article, I linked to that article, that therefore policy change is in order. As we said, as regards things needing to be opened up. Okay. Quick hit number 2. Freakin' Snopes, man. We just did a recent episode topic about propaganda. And I got... So go find this on Facebook too, because I have a devastating takedown. Another truth police situation where they're really not any more believable. You just have to take them like any other source. Go read the content. Don't believe the headline necessarily. Sometimes there's good content, sometimes they're not. Anyway, there was a post about on May 30th maybe about an alleged bulletin board flyer with, you know, those kind with the tear-off numbers. You know, go make money at home, 620-225, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So this one said, get paid to be a professional anarchist. Now, right up front, that's like, prob's not, right?
Right.
Prob's not. But that's not what Snopes is for. Snopes is not for probably not. Right. So they label this fake within a day, which is fine. It might be fake, but Snopes is supposed to do a certain thing. They're the fact checkers. Well, they labeled it fake just because the place that allegedly placed the flyer denied that they did it. Dude!
Wasn't me.
Dude, that's like if you find some white supremacist thing and then go call the local chapter and they say, wasn't us.
Wasn't us.
Well, it's false, stamp. Okay, literally one source. And I looked at this just last night, too, just to see if it was still the same, because I saw this several days ago. And I checked it again last night, you know, when they have, we're saying all this important stuff. And then here's our sources. The one source was where the image came from that was on the flyer. So these MFers are like, well, gotta have a source, so let's talk about, act like we did a little bit of research.
I asked Grandma. She said no.
No, what they really did is they went to that group who said, it's the Thurston County Democrats up in Washington, not in Nebraska, be careful. I don't. And they said, well, we didn't do it, and how dare people spread these lies? Well, that's great that they're denying it. That's part of the story. But it's not the stamp. It's not the verdict. So anyway, caught friggin' Snopes again. All right. Quick hit number 3. Oh, what was it? Oh, yes, I wanted to do a follow-up on something we said last week.
Okay.
And the follow-up was that I said I was going to watch the Bob Lazar Netflix special. Mm-hmm. I said I'd watch the Joe Rogan Experience episode, and I liked it. I found him to be easy to believe and seem credible and smart. And anyway, I did watch that Netflix. It's something about Bob Lazar, Area 51, UFOs and flying saucers.
Yeah.
Anyway, I watched it, and you said, tell us how it was. And it was very good. All right, quick hit. Number 4. Okay, so we're going to have our fun topics, right? And, I kept going. You know how I can be. I'm like, I kept going, what about this one? So here are
we had a meeting last night. So it's a very serious meeting to figure out a topic for today. And let me just tell you, he has a whole different sense of what's fun.
Okay, so here it is. Here's the first idea. Uh-huh. I said to Kim, what about stand-up comedy in early 1940s war-torn Europe?
No.
So no.
Nope.
And then I'm like, so this is rejected fun topic number 2. Measles. Those spots sure do make people look funny.
No.
No, you rejected that. Yeah.
Nope.
So then my next idea, I thought this would be hilarious good fun. Boiling Banksters, a game show proposal.
No.
No, see, no.
He had to phone a friend. Let me just tell you.
I kept thinking. And so then I thought, okay, I got it. I finally got it. Popcorn, popsicles, pop rocks, pop rock, and Papa Smurf. A potpourri.
No.
that's what she told me. We're reliving when I ran these past her the first
Although
time.
we did have Pop Rocks last time.
Yeah, we did.
I had some Pop Rocks. Yep.
And then my final attempt, and I'm telling you, I just had really bad luck, but Super Balls. Man, can they bounce?
That was... That was actually a topic that he thought. So, are you gonna? We'll talk about where this topic came from.
All right, that's it for Tyson's Quick Hits.
Oh my goodness! So, just to let everybody know, today's date is 6/4 of 2020. I like to give you guys the date so you know what's going on. And gyms are open. We still are dealing with closures and phases and
I just did the David Letterman thing.
David Letterman, he just threw it.
Yeah, I just threw it off the side. He just threw my postcard.
He just threw his postcard. Now he picked it back up because it's going to bother him.
I don't have a production assistant. You just spin it like a frisbee. I'm going to just do that throughout the episode until it bothers you.
It's not going to bother me. Just keep doing it. So, anyway, we're still dealing with closures and all this kind of stuff. And but my gyms are open. And I am very lucky that I have a very small gym. So, there's really no different than any other time. I love the fact. The first day that I went back, the guy at the front desk... We're a golf course as well. Mm-hmm. So they've had golf. So they've been there the whole time. But he had his mask on. But by the time I left, he was standing outside with his mask down on his throat, like trying to breathe. Because these masks, although they look pretty damper and sharp, and they're pretty little masks, they're hot. So... I went in, worked out. There's not that many people in there. I go at like 9 o'clock in the morning, so I don't go to the early group and I don't go to the late group. So I did that.
Smart.
But I also still like to walk because I like to get my tan going so I'm still walking outside. But the stress level of knowing that I have the gym, I can get up right now and go to the gym if I want to. It's 24 hours. I can do whatever I want. It's that mental part people don't understand.
See, and for me, I haven't started it. And that's what kind of made me mad. I was like, man, I was going a pretty good flow. You were so good.
Oh, you'll get back there. Now I'm going to have to harass you. Now I'm going to have to push you.
Yeah.
Because I go, but like today I walked 5 miles. Last Friday I walked 7 miles. I walked 7 miles on Saturday. I've got swimsuit season, starting up tomorrow. I need to make sure. Yeah, I need to make sure that I am getting my workout in because I got to get into my 2-piece. And I can't be looking raunchy even though I'm by myself.
5'2", eyes are blue. And also you got the lake. So guys can be scandalous down there by actually associating the Party Cove.
Ooh, yeah. I probably won't go there this year because my friends who had boats pretty much divorced and wives got the boats, so probably not going this year. But bummer. I actually might go once. I've got a couple friends that have boats. So I'll probably get out there at least once. So I was out walking the other day and I had just got done. I was doing it was actually 7 miles in the neighborhood, and I'd walked around. I went down a street and I was going down a neighborhood street. You know how they have those digital speed signs to put in neighborhoods that tell you how fast you're going and they blink? So I'm walking down. I've got my headphones on, listening to my music, and all of a sudden that thing pops on. It says 34 miles an hour. And I'm getting closer to it, and it's like 32 miles an hour. And I'm walking, and I'm thinking 31 miles an hour, and I'm thinking, dude, man, I'm booking it. And then a car drove by, and I thought, I guess I'm not booking it. I guess I'm still at my 3 or my 4 miles an hour. And the bad thing is I'm not joking. I was like, I didn't hear the cars, and I'm thinking that thing is broke. Like, what is it doing starting up?
So you listen to what kind of headphones do you have?
They're just in my ear. I mean, they're just normal headphones. No, they're not Bluetooth. Okay. The Bluetooth ones I have I have the Bluetooth ones, and they die on me. They don't last that long.
That's why
I get halfway out to my walk, and they start going beep.
Yeah, because when you do a long walk,
and you're like, okay, yeah, no. So I have my plug-in.
But
my
you keep it up.
Yeah,
pretty high just to
well, it's about
jam
halfway. It's about halfway, and I'm not jamming. I'm actually listening to Audio Machine, so it's more inspirational. Like I'm about to run, like running.
What was the name of that movie? I mean, I totally catch the reference.
Oh, it wasn't 10, was it? No.
Glory.
No. Oh my gosh. Chariots of Fire.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
I'm like,
I didn't have to think about that. I didn't even have to look it up on my phone.
Look at you.
Look at me. Boom. So, all right. So last week, I was listening to. listening to our podcast.
Just to set things. This is right before the second disaster.
Don't even talk about it. Don't talk about it yet. Because in our last podcast, we said we're finally going to get back to normal. We hope nothing else happens. Boom!
I think that was like, did we find out about it Thursday or Wednesday night?
Yeah, it was like the next day. We're like, and an officer kills somebody on camera, and now we're going to have protests, and we're going to have riots. And
we thought maybe it wouldn't hit with about one of the smallest capital cities.
I didn't think it was
not much,
but not even that. It was just the tension all went up. Like it all went back up. Everything was kind of loosening down, and you're kind of getting stressed. And none of this has really bothered me. I'm talking about the people that I'm watching that are really, really having a hard time with this. So I'm not going into any of that stuff. When the cases and stuff like that get up, we'll talk more about it. We'll do a whole thing on it. But what I wanted to talk about, because it's fresh on my mind, there's a lot of people out there who are doing the protests, and there's not many that have sat and watched the rioters stand right in front of their restaurant or business possibly.
Now, that was on Facebook Live, right?
So that was on the news channels. We're watching it. So we had a peaceful protest downtown and in Topeka on Monday, and it was a blackout one or something. So the flyer went out. We were all notified in downtown, all of the business owners, and I've got a group of all the business owners in one big group, so we can just get it out really fast. And so the organization that runs our downtown sent a message that says, "Hey, we've got a peaceful protest given by the youth," and I don't know if it was the mayor's youth council, but it was some kids that were important because they knew it was like they were popular, like because everybody was like screaming their names and all that stuff, so they're known. So they're, I don't know, student council. I don't know who they were. But anyway, they said, make sure that you bring in anything, your chairs, tables. This is what's going to happen. It's going to be at 6 o'clock. They're going to meet down at 13th Street. Our restaurant is between 10th and 9th Street. Mm-hmm. And so we don't have anything outside except my mom has these huge planters that are about, I'd have to say 3 feet. Like, they're about this big. I don't know if that's 3 feet or not, but they're huge.
They're probably 2.5 foot across, if not 2 1/4.
They're pretty top. Big planters that sit on either side of one of our restaurants.
And set probably 2 foot, or if not 2 foot, a foot and 10 inches high.
They're high. They're huge.
They hold a lot of soil.
And so then in our group, somebody had said, "Hey, what about all the trash cans and the cigarette containers and stuff like that? Anything that is loose, they can use to bust windows." And all of our downtown businesses, they're just all glass. Like, they're all front glasses. Yeah. They're old buildings, and they have beautiful glass entryways and
of course,
showcases.
we know that the peaceful thing, but you know what's happened everywhere. It's like, if 90%, if 99 are peaceful, and 1%, well, guess what happens? Some things break.
But actually,
only 1%.
They were told that there was going to be problems. They were told that there were 2 groups coming.
Wow.
This isn't a secret. There was going to be one at the Capitol, and there was going to be one at this. They had the youth one. We didn't know anything about it, but the police department was actually informed that there was probably going to be damage. So our police department basically put their police cars and all the officer cars, they put all those away because the police department is at 3rd Street from ours, right down the street. So we're at 9th Street, they're at 3rd Street. And so they put all those cars away. They came around and got all the trash cans. They went and looked in all the bushes. They removed all the big rocks, anything that was decorative that had, like, that could do damage to a window. Right. They got rid of all of those. And they cleaned up the whole avenue. So I'm watching the peaceful rally. They start at McDonald's and they walk down, and we have this brand new Evergy Plaza, which is kind of like an outdoor amphitheater, a little one. It's not big, but it'll hold a couple thousand people that normally do our downtown events. It's pretty big. It's like almost an entire city block.
Right.
Okay. It was supposed to open up, but during the coronavirus, we couldn't open it up in April. So we've never had an event there. We've never done anything there. And they said they're going to stop there, and then they're going to the police department. So we watched that. They went down. They stood on the stage. They told the kids to get out, to run for office, to get involved in the community, to vote. It was very positive. And instead of going to the police department, they went back down. So I called my friend and I was like, yeah, I guess everything's good. And she was like, that doesn't make any sense. And they walked all the way down to like 15th Street. They turned around, and evidently then they started walking back, and I shut it off because I was bored. I'm not watching people walk down a street, okay? And they're yelling and they're chanting and they're doing what they're doing. It was about 10 o'clock, and my friend texted me, and she said, the rioting has begun. They're at the police department. So I turned the video back on, and that's when they're throwing bricks and rocks, and they smashed in they had one police car out there. And I had told her, I said, if it were me, I had to put an old crappy car out there so that they would have a target to destroy, as opposed to destroying either the sign, the building, the windows.
And you're right. The funny thing was that thing was all the way across a mostly empty parking lot. With a building in the center of the parking lot, and it was like, if you ever go to Walmart and try to park as far away as possible, that's an exaggeration, it's not the size, but same idea. That there was one car, and I guess that's the one you're talking about that got hit, that was way by the street. It's on the outside of the parking lot.
So it was right. It's like, hey, hit me. That's kind of what that was. So, all the stuff that they brought in, the bricks and things, they brought that with them. And so we watched that, and
the story being it's that separate group.
All of it, well, some of the other group had come down there because they'd gone down the law department, but you could tell that people were like, they're throwing rocks, and so they started to leave. Well, then all of a sudden you hear, we need a paramedic, we need a paramedic. So, but when they started throwing the rocks, they started having this blaring out from the sheriff department saying, this has now become an
unlawful demonstration.
You need to leave the area.
45 minutes to
leave the area. You need to leave the area. And it was like it just ran on repeat. So they're yelling, we need an AMR. So here comes the sheriff officers to go get the person, and they start throwing bricks at them. Yeah. Okay, you've got someone over here supposedly needing help. Yeah. So what does an officer think? Is that a ploy? Are you trying because we have to help. So that's one thing that really makes me mad is that, okay, I get it, but first of all, nobody in Topeka was in this place that did this. This is not happening here. So why are we destroying it?
Yeah. Well, and then B, it's not like it's even the Minneapolis police coming towards you. It's the Topeka police, because you called for them.
Exactly. And probably, and some of you out there, is probably an uncle or a relative that's in a uniform. But finally, they brought in our the armored car that we have that we never get to use, but we have it. It's freaking awesome. I've been inside of it, actually. And so they brought that up and they parked it, and then they ran out and they grabbed the girl and they carried her, and she has asthma and she had an asthma attack and whatever. So they take her away. They throw more bricks, and we're just sitting there, and I'm just watching and I'm watching. I'm like, thank God it's at 3rd and Kansas. And then all of a sudden at 1st and Kansas, it was like a flippin' movie. You saw like some movement, and then all you saw were these uniforms.
You could see the look in Kim's eyes right now.
And I was like, what?
Keep going. I kind of interrupted you.
What is this? And like all of a sudden in full black, like covered from head to toe, with their stuff, was the Kansas Highway Patrol. And I was like, even if there's a girl in there, I'm now a lesbian because that's freaking hot. Like, I'm sorry. I was like, it was like a movie. It was just like because they came out of nowhere. So they come walking down.
They're trying to take the full width.
And they have the full width of the road, but there's like 4 deep. And so they're just walking down, and it's 4 or 5 lanes of traffic. And they're walking down, and they stop right there. And so that's when the few of the chosen ones who basically were
at the north, where did they stop?
3rd Street. Okay. Right at 3rd Street, right at the police department. They stopped there. They were probably there for like 10 minutes. But that's when...
that gave everybody... Dude, there's a lot of people... It gave the protesters a chance to understand, hey...
Oh, yeah.
It's probably time to clear out, like we've been saying.
So the peaceful people were gone.
Yeah.
And we're back to chemology. So just remember, we're in chemology. We are not in fact checking. I was not there. This is what's in my brain. So if it's wrong, it's wrong. But I'm not normally wrong. So in my mind, I call them. What did I call them last night? The riot, not the riot directors. The riot. I call them something
like that.
Anyway, so those people that probably through social media and through internal groups that they are all in, had kind of probably convinced some kids, young adults, they're not kids because the youngest one was 19, some young adults to be there, to be the front of the line, to guarantee, you're going to be the rebel rousers. You're going to pick up the canisters if you're doing this.
Again, we're talking a different group, so don't get your panties in a wad. You're going to be the agitators, if you will. I'm not going to use a term. Agitator. When I say peaceful protests, those don't have agitators.
But those people have already left.
Right, exactly.
When the Kansas Highway Patrol came, you could see them and we're out. In fact, most of those left. Most of those people left when they threw the first rock. Like the group was probably about 40 people at that time. There's like a group of 40 people. And of course we're in COVID, so everybody has these masks on. You can't see anyone's faces.
Remember how we were making a joke about that?
Yeah.
Not the protest. How about how, it's like, oh, well, geez, usually you'd be worried about someone wearing a mask.
Yeah.
You'd think it was a robber or someone doing something. And now it's like, and why did they do that? So they can't be, you can't tell who they are as easily.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we have people being agitators and got masks on. And they have a good reason for it.
Right, exactly. So I called them the Riot Commanders. That was my name. So the Riot Commanders got out of the street. They are on the sidewalk. That is what they were asked to do, is to get out of the street. But the local young adults, they're in the street. And we have one young girl in a wheelchair. And she's got this long sprayed green hair so she can stand out in the crowd. You can see her anywhere. And she keeps rolling her thing right up to the toes of the officers, like right to their faces. And then she rolls around. They haven't moved yet. They're rolling. She's just rolling around.
She went way down the 3rd?
She's been at 3rd. Okay, we're at 3rd. We're at the police department.
Yeah.
So she's rolling around. She's rolling around in front of them. And so then all of a sudden they just start to go forward. And then everybody now is moving down to 4th Street. And they're moving forward. And then you can't really see because I'm only watching this off of a camera from the news station, but the next thing you know, they put their masks on, and that's when they started putting the things. But that was down, and then they had the one guy that had his glove on, and he'd go and he'd pick it up and he'd throw it back at him. Who put their masks on? The Highway Patrol put their mask on. I mean, nobody else had masks. Highway Patrol put their masks on and did the gas. So I mean, they had to put them down because they were up here.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But then you immediately talked about the guy who grabbed it. So I wasn't sure maybe a few of the agitators.
The protester grabbed it and threw it back at them with his glove on. So he knew that he needed the glove. We watched them do it at Kansas City, how they would throw the canisters and then they would throw it back at him. So anyway, this went on and on and on all the way down until they got to flipping 9th Street. So by this time, they have smashed windows out of multiple buildings. Because there was stuff happening while this was going on. It was like a 2-part play here. So they tried to break into Capital Federal Savings. some people that live downtown, because we have a lot of people living downtown. Now, if this would have happened 7 years ago, nobody would have been down there. They'd have been like this. Right. The downtown is yours. There's no businesses down here. Nobody lives down here. Nobody cares. But we've done our revitalization.
It's better than it was.
So anyway, they tried to go into Capitol Federal, which I would think that would make it a federal offense when you go into a bank. But either a downtown peaceful protester or a downtown resident spotted them, got the police officers, so the police officers arrested them. So and that would be the first guy on there that said whatever. So they kept going down. Now they've stopped in front of 9th Street, and they're just stopped there. And there's actually media are up on top of our buildings because we have like some places you can go on top of the buildings. And that's when I get my call from my mom. She's like, well, they knocked over the planters. And I was like, really? And she goes, yeah, they just panned a shot and I saw dirt all over the street. All over the sidewalk. And I was like, okay, well, as long as the windows stay in place. Those are $1,000 each window, and there's probably 10 of them. If they could just stay in place, that would be great, because my brothers are out of town, and I'm not going to, how do I go do that? Anyway, it was the most stressful 2 hours of my life of watching that, because you had no clue what they were going to do. They've already broken windows in multiple businesses, and which I don't understand what that has anything to do with what's going on. I think I have seen so many people on my Facebook that they're like, well, you know what? They are tired of not getting their word out. Okay, well, then go destroy their stuff. Don't destroy my stuff. We take on everybody. We're not bad people.
Here's the other thing, too, is that, and I know it's probably because it was planned for that area, so it was close to the. I mean, the good protesters worked with the chief, I think.
Oh yeah, that's how how every protest has been. Don't act like it was just us.
Right, but I just mean the irony is that of all the places to go find businesses in little old Topeka that does not have a vibrant local business community as much as some cities our size does, to go find local business instead of the big corporate mean people, it's that exact strip. Right. So that's kind of the irony of it.
Well, and the funny thing is that we don't have an Apple store or an H&M or a Best Buy. We just have mom and pop restaurants. So, like, the bank, like, what are you going to steal in a bank? Literally, what are you going to steal in a bank? A desk? Like, there's nothing in a bank that you're going to steal but a desk and a chair, and maybe a computer, a big computer, not even laptops, because they're all put away. And so we didn't have a Target or anything like that downtown for them to want to loot. It would have been just pure destruction. And they did break the windows off of my friend's business, Topeka Blueprint. There was Ameriprise, and there was multiple other places that had been damaged just by kids throwing stuff through. So anyway, finally, they start arresting people, and my riot commanders are standing on the sidewalk, and you can tell that that's what they are.
There really is a distinction between the street and the sidewalk?
The street is why they're getting arrested. You have got to get out of the street. You have to get out of the street. You need to leave the street, and they were in the street. They would not get out of the street. If they would have gone to the sidewalks, then they would have just sat there, because you can be on the sidewalk because we didn't have a curfew. There's nothing you can do on the sidewalk, but you can't be in a street when they declare whatever.
So you saw the commanders on the sidewalk.
The commanders, so they arrest the girl on the wheelchair. She's a 19-year-old that lives in Topeka, and the girl's, she's got her camera going, and she's, videotaping, and she's looking at the camera going, she's in a wheelchair! She's in a wheelchair!
You mean when the
commander, when they were arresting the girl in the wheelchair, putting her little plastic things on her arms, she's screaming, she's in a wheelchair! Like, okay, here's the deal.
Looking for that
whether you're in a wheelchair,
moment.
Whether you're in a wheelchair, or whether you're walking around, you have been asked, and you've got about 55 highway patrol telling you to get your butt out of the street.
And just the amount that I watched, they got, it was at least 30 minutes after they started saying you need to start dispersing.
45 minutes.
Well, I mean, before those, because I watched a good amount of it, and those guys had not shown up yet. It was just them.
Oh, yeah. No, there was another 45. I was 2 hours of me watching this because it was so anyway, they finally get the people arrested, and then all of a sudden they start running down to the Capitol. So that's when the highway patrol people started going down 9th Street. And 9th Street walks, if you just walk 9th Street for 1 block, you're going to walk into our Capitol. It's right there, the Capitol of Kansas. Because the capital of Kansas. Look at you. You guys learned something today. Yeah. So anyway, that was the experience. But here's the one good thing that came out of it. And there's multiple good things that came out of it. By the time my mom got to the restaurant, our neighbors had put all the... Stop making fun of me. My neighbors had put all the dirt back and replanted my mom's flowers.
That's nice.
That was very nice. And then the rest of them, the whole day, they went around, cleaned up all the glass. They helped put the boards up because we got our business owners in downtown, we're all family. We have no corporate. It's all locally owned people down there. We're all small businesses.
To your point, it's not one of those, hey, look at the little downtown area, and then it's somehow popular enough that a ritzy store has come in. None of that.
No, we have
even
none.
the camera shop. Is the camera shop even still open?
Yeah, no, they're staying. Wolves, yes, they're still staying. They just announced they're not moving.
So, there's no we're
all
nothing
small
like that.
So anyway, so when you're out there and you're thinking, yeah, that's what they deserve. No, that's not what they deserve. First of all, destruction doesn't help anything. So if you're a person out there that you are behind these rioters, they're not protesting. They're just wanting to destroy and take attention away from something else that was supposed to be positive. And so I have no compassion, and I have a lot of friends, and I've snoozed them all, so I've that are on my friends who actually thought it was okay. And someone had made a comment on my Facebook page because I had made a comment about something that had nothing to do with this, and she had made kind of a snarky little comment to my positive comment, and I told her, if I really was worried about what you were talking about, I might have been talking about the 2 painful hours I got to watch and hope that my family's business wasn't destroyed. Now, a lot of businesses were destroyed. And if anybody that's listening to this right now thinks, yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Well, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. That's not okay. These people work really hard to run their business. And I don't even care if it's a Target or a Best Buy or anything. There are people that are working to give you guys a great place to live in your community, and you do not have the right to destroy that.
Which is normally something we strive for, and not in rant mode, but for me, again, it's like it takes off the focus.
Right.
It takes off the focus because all of a sudden you had this universal outrage at what happened to a human in America,
right?
And now it's not universal outrage anymore.
No, it's
just diluted things.
It's taken a lot away. So
and that saddens me that argument gets diluted, and it's like I could have predicted that. I mean, I iterate things as soon as I heard. But the funny thing is, I told you I went to the protest on Saturday. And even then I'm like, man, it's a fine line, guys. I'm hoping, like, you know me. I'm actually saying, gotta change the law, guys. Gotta change the law. I'm saying the names of the victims, and I'm supporting it. But I'm trying to remember, it's about that. It's not about all your. I don't mean for this to sound condescending. It's not the generic civil rights, slogans that you yell.
Right.
You got to be focused. And even then, I was like, it's a little awkward, but I'm still happy to be here. Because I do support this particular cause. And yes, they're potentially starting it to be too broad, but that was all peaceful. 2 hours, couldn't be prouder.
Right.
And there's a couple of signs that were like, ooh, that's probably not a sign you want to be carrying within 3 blocks of the police station, if you know what I mean. And if the wrong people see that, they're going to be off of the cause immediately because there were some bad signs.
Yep.
But most of them were great. So I was at that peaceful protest, and then I'm like, oh, on Monday again? Well, I know they're supposed to get back to it, but it's like, oh. In between the Saturday and the Monday, some bad stuff had happened.
Right. Well, and so one more thing, and then we'll move on to adoption. If you honestly want to make a change, it is not overnight. It is not by walking in the street and yelling things. It is about getting involved in your community. It is about knowing what's going on. It's about starting conversations, continuing those conversations, finding the people in your community that have the power to make that change, and work your ass off to make it change. And it's a lot of work. Women did not get the right to vote because for one weekend they marched and said we want to do it. Go look at what they had to do to get these huge things. You've got
to get these allies.
Changes.
You've got to get the allies.
You've got to figure out what to do.
I don't mean that they're apologizing on your behalf or kneeling in front of you.
No,
I don't mean those allies.
That's not it.
I mean you have to get these allies and continue these alliances if the law was going to change.
Exactly. And you have got to run for office. You have got to stay in school. You have got to be responsible, and you've got to want to do the best you possibly can. That is the difference. Is don't let anybody tell you that you can't, whether it's the community, whether it's society, whether it's your parent, whether it's a teacher. You do not let anybody tell you that you cannot be the best person that you can be, and you can even be better than what they expect from you. That is up to you. And if everybody would start changing their attitudes and wanting to work to make the world a better place, as opposed to taking the easy way out by thinking, oh, I did my part. Oh, I went and volunteered on a board and I'm just changing the world. You're not changing the world if you just show up 3 times a year and then you go back home. You honestly have to work.
Or if it's fine if you don't, but then just don't do these other really non-productive things instead and think you're doing I'm not active. I just kind of deal with my own life and I don't.
But you're not out pleading to change anything.
Right.
If you stand up, and as I always say, you have to talk the talk and you got to walk the walk. And this is a lot more about some peaceful protests for a week and then more riots after a trial or before a trial and whatever they're trying to do. This is a lifelong commitment that you are going to make the world or your community a better place. So we'll stop there. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about.
We'll probably have to make that an excursion instead.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, so we're going to start talking about some adoption. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So on the topic of adoption, the reason I thought of this is because I was actually not a truth cyborg created in a lab.
So he says.
That's my
DNA's
story.
test not in yet. He left a bottle of water over here, and I had to analyze.
So anyway, therefore, it's a subject dear and near to my heart is adoption, and I just think it's one of the most awesome things that a person can ever possibly do, and it's to share that love and to rescue somebody who needs that rescuing. What could be better? And I always say, you never need to be concerned, birth parents. I think that, granted, I'm especially Spock-brained, if I'm not actually just a truth cyborg created in a lab. But I was never irritated by my birth mother. I even thought of the idea, boy, I'm going to tell her off when I get a chance if I ever meet her. What? I think there's a lot of guilt carried. And just that quick aside, you needed to do what you needed to do.
Can you tell them the age, what your ages were? Because a 15-year-old versus your age could have a different.
True.
Could have a different thing.
There's
different ages.
So I can tell you that the background for me was definitely not a, I just can't even have a kid right now, and so it was right out of, the hospital. Wasn't planned. It was when I was 3. Now at that point that did become, but to me that's always the decision. It did become, I cannot do this. I cannot handle this many kids, and I was the one that was chosen. But I just still never felt that guilt. I never felt like, I can understand that they are guilty. They do feel guilty.
Right.
But I wish they would understand that most of us put that among the broad possibilities of why we got put up for adoption, there's so many that were for a good reason. They had to have thought about it a lot, and it's what they felt they needed to do, and that's good enough. Right. So anyway, just a little bit of background that I hope that biological parents who have to do that decision, I hope it's gonna haunt you, and I get that, but I don't want you to carry that so heavily. Right. You did something, and then in the end, it was a good decision, and maybe they try to find you later, and that's great. So anyway, off of that quick one, let's talk about famous adopters. Famous adopters. Okay. Now, some of these you might know.
Some of these.
Like, without even looking, what would you have, a couple of them you would have known, real quick, and then we'll just name the list. Famous adopters. So people who are famous and adopt kids.
I would have said...
Well, one for sure, and it's a couple. Skinny, former modelish, and Missouri-born.
Oh, I would have said, oh my gosh, I can't remember what his name is. Angelina Jolie.
Yeah,
and
Brad Pitt.
That would have been my biggest one.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one. But Sheryl Crow, Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman. So that was probably a little paired deal there. Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, some of these people are like people you go, you know what? I like that person.
Oh, yeah, Sandra Bullock.
And then when you find out that they do this, you go, man, that kind of goes along. I've always kind of thought that person was probably pretty genuine, So Jamie Lee Curtis, Sandra Bullock, Hugh Jackman. Everybody loves Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Diane Keaton, Meg Ryan. I mean, everybody loves Meg Ryan. James Caviezel, who played Jesus in the one movie and is in that weird intelligence one now where they've got all the machines. Of course, Brad and Angelina. Ozzy Osbourne, I guess everybody knew that from the reality show, but honestly, I've never seen the reality show.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan, because we know one of his, Michael Reagan, I believe, is not his biological son. Parker Stevenson. I
love Parker.
All women your age probably.
Christy Alley. He was married to Christy Alley.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
Calista Flockhart, remember from that sitcom where it's just kind of, and then also Walt Disney.
Oh, I did not know that. So
some famous adopters. Isn't that a great list?
That is one.
Some famous adoptees. I split this up because there's kind of interesting dynamically that sometimes it's because the kids, the parents they just can't do it right now, but it's still adopted to family.
Right.
And that's okay. I just thought it was interesting to split it up. I'm not saying it's less of a taking on a gift of love.
Right.
In fact, it might be more, because you see, and honestly, it kind of breaks my heart sometimes when I see a grandmother have to take care of kids.
Yes, you have to take care of the kids.
That's another whole thing.
So these are the ones who were adopted
to family members.
To family, okay.
Yeah. Bill Clinton was adopted to a family member. Famous blues musician Bo Diddley, Willie Nelson, J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh, wow.
Man. John Lennon, Jesse Jackson, Truman Capote from In Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's. 50 Cent,
Oh, really?
Curtis, what's his name? Anyway, Eleanor Roosevelt was adopted out to family members. Eric Clapton was. Jack Nicholson, and he didn't know his older sister wasn't his mom until Time broke the story when Jack was like 37. So a lot of these that happens, it was like some of these people, that older generation where it was more of a, a little bit of a scandal. So just let them think that it's somebody else's is and Jamie Foxx.
Oh my.
Yeah, and outside family. These are adoptees that were adopted outside the family. Marilyn Monroe.
Whoa.
Malcolm X. Sarah McLachlan. No wonder she likes to adopt dogs and sing songs about
awesome.
It. Nelson Mandela.
Whoa.
Michael Bay, that he did Bad Boys, Transformers, Armageddon, Pearl Harbor. Melissa Gilbert, I always used to think she was such a cutie. Was she Little House on the Prairie?
Yeah, she was in Little House on the Prairie.
So she was adopted outside of family. Deborah Harry. Ray Liotta.
Wow.
Frances McDormand, who everybody loves. She was in Fargo. She's actually married to one of the Coen brothers. Mm-hmm. And she did that 3 Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, which was a great movie.
Oh my gosh, that was a good movie.
Edgar Allan Poe, Nicole Richie, which I never knew that. I don't know why I never watched those reality shows.
I did because
it was a band. It was a fellow band member, and things went, I don't know, sideways for Lionel Richie's fellow band member. So he adopted their daughter. Isn't that the sweetest?
Awesome.
And did you not think that Lionel Richie would do something like that? He always just seems like such a great guy. Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Is that good?
Very good.
Dr.
Got
Ruth.
it. Dr. Ruth.
Dr. Ruth Westheimer. So you put the penis...
Where did that come from?
Dr. Ruth.
She's a sex doctor.
She's a sexual therapist. So anyway, she also got adopted outside her family. But the other thing about that is that was back in like World War II. I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean, she was Jewish during World War II. You remember Scott Hamilton, who was the skater that was so fun in 1984, and then he was kind of a big public figure for a long time after that, and did a lot of things. So Steve Jobs. I did not know that, but I don't read like the read the biographies like you.
I read his books.
And he's old enough that it was kind of scandalous. The father was a Syrian Muslim, and they just decided the family they just couldn't do it, you know. So he was adopted out, and then of course me,
the famous Tyson.
Now, yes, I look best for last there, and a few more. They're just interesting, and I couldn't tell from when I looked whether or not they're adopted out. I think Dave Thomas, founder of Wendy's, is probably adopted out.
But he also adopted his daughter, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Gerald Ford. And, speaking of incredible people in history, after I say Gerald Ford, former president, Snooki.
You just spit on me. Now I probably have COVID.
Sorry. Snooki from Jersey
Snooki
Shore.
From Jersey Shores.
Yeah, Larry Ellison, who's co-founder of Oracle. Dante Culpepper, who's a former Minnesota Viking pro quarterback. Run DMC's Daryl McDaniels. I didn't know that.
Wow.
Dan O'Brien. Do you remember Dave versus Dan? When they'd have the triathlon. Nike took on the triathlete thing, and there was two very good decathletes out of the U.S.
I'm going to say no.
And the Olympics are coming up. They had a Dave versus Dan. Anyway, Dan O'Brien was one of them. Les Brown, motivational speaker. You probably know him.
Yeah.
Ted Danson, also adopted. And Kristen Chenoweth, musical theater, virtuoso vocalist, movies and TV. So, yeah, a lot of very interesting people were adopted, besides me. So, some adoption stats now. I'm going to give you actually what we're going to go through here. I got adoption stats. I've got adoption and pop culture. I've got adoption professionals. And requirements to adopt and some quotes on adoption and history and trends.
We might not get through all this. We
may not
only
get
have
through all
20 minutes, so.
Well, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so just some quick stats. 428,000 kids are in foster care in the U.S., and about 138,000 are adopted each year. Over one half are 6 or older, and more males than females are there. And of course, blacks are disproportionately represented. I think we all know that. 1.5 million are adopted. There are 1.5 million adopted children in the U.S. I get a little confused on that because I don't know when they're mixing, people who were adopted and were children. Because you see, another one is around 7 million Americans are adopted. About 60% in foster care spend 2 to 5 years before being adopted. Some never get adopted. And like I said, around 7 million Americans are adopted. Around 100 million Americans have adoption in their immediate family, either adopting or placing or being adopted. 100 million, so basically almost 1/3 of people have adoption, has happened or is around their immediate family.
Yep.
37% of adopted kids are non-Hispanic white, and 73% of adoptive parents are non-Hispanic white. And the average age of children waiting for a family is 8, which is much older than I was. I got adopted when I was 6. 19,942 international adoptions in 2007, and that's gone down. We'll look at a few reasons. Only 9,300 in 11. A lot of countries became more restrictive. It wasn't really a U.S. thing. Some of the main countries that would be providing international adoptions, things got more restrictive. As kind of like, are they taking our kids? Just concerns about that. Not that there weren't genuine adoptive parents, but just some countries thought it was getting a little out of hand. 1 out of 25 U.S. families with children have an adopted child. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Now, right now, 60 to 70% of domestic adoptions are that newfangled thing called open adoption, which was very rare back when I got adopted. You didn't get to know who your family was, and the family certainly didn't go have a fun time together, first or anything like that. Approximately 40% of those adopted are from the U.S. foster care system, and therefore the other would be like private adoption, and things like that. 40% of adopted children are of a different race, culture, or ethnicity than both of their adopted parents. Now, that's great in one sense because it didn't used to be the case. It'd be, ooh, that's awkward. And now, and it's interesting because it gets to the idea that people think we're actually adopting more than ever, and we're actually not adopting anywhere near the peak. And the reason they think that is because it's more visible, because I look like my mom and dad, my adoptive mom and dad, because I was a white kid. My dad had brown hair, my mom had, and both of them had blue eyes. So, and now it's just more obvious. So there's this visual, so you see it's more obvious when someone's adopted, because thank goodness, cross trans or interracial adoption is more accepted and more done. So you have this perception that there's more. United States adopts more children than any other country. Now, I think actually I looked at the second thing. It's close to this second thing. In fact, the U.S. adopts more children than the rest of the world. So there's one thing that said that. Another one said, well, close to the U.S., close to more than the rest of the world, which is huge. We're not even 1/10 of the whole population of the world. No, actually, 300 million, 3 billion. We're not even 1/20th of the world's population. We adopt more than everybody else.
I have my hairdresser actually adopted twins from one of a foreign country, and I don't think it was Africa, but it could have been like an area over in Africa, and it took her like 4 years.
Yeah, there's some stories.
So they were born, and by I think it was maybe 5 years, because they were almost 5 years old. They were brand new newborns, and they went over, they got to meet them, they started the paperwork, and it took them that long, and they brought them over, and they're identical twins, but now they're like, like 13 or 14 years old. And actually, I mean, they didn't know the language. They kind of struggle in school. Their learning abilities are totally different. And so, they had already adopted a little boy and had 2 of their own kids. So they've got 5 kids now.
Yeah. So one thing that's interesting, a lot of people think that, well, it's true that more non-Hispanic whites adopt, but look at this one down here in 8 where it says, remember that you've got the out of family, but you got the in family.
Right.
And so it's actually, per capita, black men are the most likely racial group to have adopted. Because maybe they're taking on a family member who's not in great shape, and just economically, socioeconomically, that's more of a thing there. So per black person, and black men specifically, the highest rate of adopting somebody.
Are they?
So you may not.
Because I never knew that they were actually adopting them. I was always thought that they would kind of just did like a assumed care. I didn't know that it was an actual physical, like an actual adoption. Not for that.
I think that's what they mean here, even though that the blurb I've caught is catching the same point that you're saying, that it used to be a lot less formal. In essence, they're adopting them. But
it's kind of like the parents lost their rights, and a lot of them are foster. Like I know a lot of grandparents who actually go through the foster system and just foster the kids, especially when when the parent is in jail or something like that. They don't actually physically adopt them, but because they're the grandparents, they foster them for a long time.
Well, as far as I know, that does mean that a formal adoption, but I'm not absolutely certain.
Right.
And of course, of same-sex couples raising children, a lot of them have an adopted child.
Right.
And it's 19%, and that's up from 2009, where it was only 8%. So that's interesting. And that's cool because it does show that... and in fact, some parents, when it's this open relationship, there's actually a trend where the biological people actually want to give their kid to lesbian or bisexual, transgender, because they feel that environment might be more, sensitive. They might grow up more sensitive and less biased.
Right.
Adoption and pop culture. Okay, movies a lot about adoption or being an adoptee. Now, there's this one that was really good. It was an Academy Award, in fact, he was nominated for the Academy Award. Dev Patel from Slumdog Millionaire in Chappie, Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. I've not seen any of those, but I recognize that guy's face, and he was in Lion in 18 or 16? 2016. And that's where he's adopted by an Australian couple, and then he goes to find his family at 25. Annie, of course, right? Elf, I kind of forgot that. That's where movies that have a lot about adoption.
Right.
Juno, which was a great little movie with Ellen Page. That's, of course, from the point of view of a teenage mom that's thinking about giving up her kid. The Blind Side, Despicable Me 2. Martian Child is supposed to be very good with John Cusack and Amanda Peet. I've never seen it. Antoine Fisher was supposed to be excellent. I've never seen that. Instant Family from just a couple years ago with Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne.
That's a cute show.
TV shows, Long Lost Family. This is a TLC series where they try to connect people. And so that's a TV show about adoption. You know, I lost my biological mom. I'm trying to find him. Parenthood has a gay family. At least has a gay family, and they've adopted like an Asian kid or something. I've hardly seen it.
Oh, that's a great show.
I'm sorry, I meant to say Modern Family.
Modern Family.
But Parenthood also had that element somewhere in it.
And Family Affair. Their parents were killed, and Jodie and Buffy and Sissy got taken by their uncle. So Family Affair, I watch that every night.
Fictional characters who were adopted, of course, there's too many to even name. But first of all, I thought it was important to lead with Paddington Bear.
Right.
But then if you go to the obvious things, and you and I neither are into literature. I like reading, but nonfiction.
Right.
So we go to the obvious, like pop culture: Iron Man, Superman, Spider-Man, Wonder Twins, Aquaman, Batman, Robin, and so many more. And then one that you would like, I think you probably watch it. This Is Us.
Randall, yes.
And Randall Situation.
Oh my gosh, This Is Us, amazing.
I had to even look it up because I didn't know. I've seen just
such a good show.
You know, I'm single. I'm not going to be watching that. You know, I'm sure it would make my.
Might get a chick. It might get a chick if you're like, I don't know, I was watching season 2 of This Is Us, and they'll be like, oh my gosh.
So, really quick about adoption professionals. There are 3 types. You can go adoption agency. They're regulated by the state and offer a wide range of services like matching and placing in home studies, matching to expectant moms, so on and so forth, even counseling. There are also adoption attorneys, and they don't generally locate birth parents. They're just basically, some of them might, but for the most part, they're just about, really making sure that contract's right. And adoption law centers that are corporations that are owned by a licensed attorney. And what I read is that when they choose a law center, they have access to a few advantages that aren't found with a firm or agency, such as advertising, shorter wait times, the connections. So if you have a little bit more money. But I've also read that it doesn't necessarily take very much, especially if you're getting a child from foster care. Now, you're going to have to go through the hoops, for them to understand, do your home studies and your financial stability and so on. But it doesn't necessarily cost very much. And then, so therefore, we get to requirements to adopt. Generally, it's not real strict on some of these. You'd be surprised as far as just a straight black letter law. Age requirements, 21 and older in the U.S., international. Under? 21 and older to adopt.
To adopt. Okay.
Stable medical health, but you can also have a letter from a primary physician if you've got some issues. A lot of times that'll be does this person seem like they're going to be able to take care of this person until they're 16. And same thing with stable emotional. You can have some issues, but then you can get a voucher. If you've had any current or history of psychiatric illness, or if you're on medication. And both of these, physical and mental, actually involve all of the household. So presumably then, if you had a kid who was just like, he couldn't control himself, you may not be able to adopt. You have to clear a child abuse investigation. There is a criminal history that's part of the home studies and the state and the FBI clearances. And you have to make a statement and give the disposition of the case if there are any arrests. And you may still be able to adopt, but you have to, one of those things where big background means you have to be honest, and maybe you can rehab it and you can still adopt. And marital requirements, there are none for foster care adoption. There may be some for private newborn adoptions, because that's more like a private contract, right?
Right.
Very, very internationally, of course. And a single person can adopt, of course, but they might have to name a guardian. And there's none specifically for financial. It's just that you must undergo an assessment that kind of shows that you might be able to do this. And adoption can, it can be as little as $0. This is from a Good Housekeeping article from 15 up to about 40,000. Some states have residency requirements. Some are short, some are long, 60 days up to a year. A lot of those states may have exceptions, or like when you're in the military. So we know you might be moving around a lot. And home environment standards, well, they vary, but you're going to have that home study, well-maintained home, safe. Good neighborhood. You may not even need a separate bedroom. It kind of differ on that. There's adoption training in some states, and a source for a lot of what I just gave you is a site called adoptionnetwork.com.
Right.
And now we've got some neat quotes on adoption. I just thought I'd bring in these cool quotes. Some of them are better than others, so I might just pick and choose given our timing. So this woman, Nia Vardalos of Big Fat Greek Wedding. Well, she had a book called called Instant Mom. She said, anyone who ever wondered how much they could love a child who did not spring from their own loins, know this, it is the same. The feeling of love is so profound, it is incredible and surprising. Nia also said in the same book, I hold my daughter in my arms and thank God for bringing her to me. If the standard route for creating a family had worked for me, I wouldn't have met this child. I needed to know her. I needed to be her mother. I know now why all these events happened or didn't happen, so I could meet this little girl. She is in every way my daughter. I am carrying my funny gift from God, and all is good. So I thought that was nice.
That is kind of cool.
Adoption advocate John Simmons. Orphanages are the only places that ever left me feeling empty and full at the same time. So I don't know if that's because, isn't that awful, but also, just seeing the vibrancy of the kids, and then maybe he knows that he's helping in that regard.
Right.
So, it's like, it's sad, but it's also has this chance to be such a good thing. So I'm speaking for him a little bit on interpreting that. Here's Jana Wolf from Secret Thoughts of an Adoptive Mother. Meeting your adoptive baby is like being set up on a blind date with someone you will have to spend the next 18 years with. You care about looks because you desperately want to fall in love with the stranger who will be your child. I thought that was an interesting, inner kind of admission that, yeah, in a way you do want it to be cute and just have this great smile and, whatever. I thought that was interesting. Nicole Deese from Before I Called You Mine. I can imagine the context of this is there any progress on this? I mean, it might be, we know the paperwork's through and it's supposed to finish any day now. And then we're going to get our my baby from Ethiopia or whatever it is. She said, if obsessive email checking disorder were a disease, I was likely already in the final stages. Trigger thumb, mindless refreshing, aimless scrolling, and of course an inability to focus on anything else in the entire world. Okay, I've got a lot more, but we'll jump to history and trends of adoption.
Right.
Adoption became an official legal process in the 1850s. It was only part of that, of course, all these unofficial, of course, that was happening all the time,
Right.
We always forget sometimes when we think that we had to have a civilization that had laws that, people just dealt with life. It doesn't mean things weren't happening.
Their parents died. I'll go ahead and take them over here.
Yeah, it's not necessarily.
So kind of like you go back to your gene pools and you're trying to figure out where everybody came from.
Right.
And you can kind of see the mess.
So 1851, Massachusetts passes a law called Adoption of Children Act. Orphan trains, of course, we've all heard of that, but we're not old enough to really understand those. Those happened from about 1854 to 1829, where a lot of the population, I suppose it probably came from the idea.
Did you say
1854 to 1929.
You said 1829.
Yeah, sorry. 1854 to 1929. So
yes.
What are we talking about? 70 years? 75 years? And that was, I imagine, because the population was still mostly in the East, and they would take these orphans from the East to the Midwest. You have
to remember
and West.
That parents didn't live that long. There was a lot of stuff.
A lot of them
they
was
have
because
the kids,
of that,
and then the parents would die because they get all these diseases and stuff like that, and so they didn't have these children.
So these orphan trains, how interesting must that have been? And orphanages, we had orphanages, then we went to the foster care system, as most of us know. So regulated in a different way, run by the state a little bit. 1912, the U.S. Children's Bureau was founded to investigate and advocate for the welfare of children. During the peak period of adoption, this is the 50s and 60s, most were conducted through agencies. Today, most are placed through private adoptions.
Right.
Up to at least 1970, adoption was only for babies and only for married couples who could not produce children biologically, explains Gloria Hockman, Director of Communications at the National Adoption Center. And people adopted children who looked like them, right? And in fact, you'll see somewhere later, what really started making the transracial adoption, I'm saying transracial, does that mean it's mixed? I just mean mixed, okay?
Right.
Is the Korean War. After the Korean War, a lot of those soldiers had mixed babies.
Mixed babies, yeah.
And so they brought them over. So the funny thing to what we were saying earlier is that the number of adoptions, the straight total number, actually peaked in 1970, has never even come close since. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is. That's
in 1970, there were more adoptions than there ever had been, around 89,000, even though the population's gone way up. However, by 1975, those numbers had dropped sharply to 48,000. Well, maybe that does mean per capita. Okay, they must be talking different things. They said a total of approximately 125,000 children have been adopted annually in the United States in recent years, but that's a sharp drop since the century-long high of 175,000 in 1970. So they're talking two different numbers here.
Yeah.
They're talking two different numbers here.
Right.
In the past, unmarried fathers didn't have to grant consent and generally had no say, but in early 1970s, consent became an issue.
Right.
The number of single women placing babies for adoption has dropped dramatically from 9% of all births to 1%. And why is that? Well, another pretty good societal trend, because unwed motherhood has lost its stigma, right?
Right.
Our attitudes have changed about that, and that's good. I mean, I'm not saying that, I think in general, don't hate on me, people. In general, a lot of studies show a household on average, because everything's different. Everything is case by case, but it's easier to parent a kid when you got both parents.
Right.
So we know that, but it's still good that it's more accepted.
But you also had single, very young people who back then, when they got pregnant, were shipped away to grandma's house, had a baby, gave it up for adoption, and came back to school. And that baby was they didn't get a choice.
Inter-country adoption peaked in 2004. So even when you go, the type where you're talking about, overseas,
right,
you wouldn't think that was peaked, but it peaked.
There's had to have been something going on in the world. There was something happening. Yep. They're it's like a big movement. They probably did like a telethon, and
single parents made up a third of foster care adoptions. Isn't that interesting? Single parents, 1/3 of those coming from foster care. I think that's great. I mean, later you're going to see that there is a reason for me to feel emotional, and I thought, man, I wonder if I could do that. And we didn't have to worry about getting a girlfriend.
No, that's right.
I could just be a dad and have a legacy, International adoptees and the U.S. adopters trends. So the reason for that sharp drop was exactly what you said. There are about 5 countries where most international adoptees come from: China, Russia, Guatemala, South Korea, Ethiopia. And those 5, all by themselves, accounted for 71% of all adoptions to the U.S. since 1999, and they have driven 88% of the total decline since 2004. And all of them have changed for any number of reasons, their adoption protocols, so we won't go into that.
Yeah.
But between diplomatic rifts and other people just worried about fraud, like people trying to sell babies because they're in a bad economic situation,
right,
or God forbid where some American family thinks they're adopting on the up and up, and they've actually, someone has done some trafficking.
Right.
So any number of those of concerns or reforms have resulted in those 5 countries not allowing as many adoptions. And also the number of adoptions from China have declined sharply. And this is a great thing, because part of the reason might be diplomatic and this and that, but part of the reason is they're not being strict about that second child policy. Now, it used to be that 99% of the Chinese adoptees, because there was two things about that one-child policy, right? There was one that was the policy, and the other was at least the preference, where if we only got one, I want to have a boy.
Right.
99% of the Chinese kid adoptions to the U.S. were females. Like,
right.
How sad.
Yeah.
And did you know that now that's not the case at all? I think, most notably, males made up a slight majority of adoptees from China for the first time on record in 2016.
That's probably because they only had boys, and they're like, all right, we kind of need some girls for the boys now.
Well, if you're saying infanticide or something like that. Oh, you mean the adoptive parents.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that China is allowing that.
I meant in China, they were only wanting boys, so they were shipping off the girls. Well, eventually, you have to have girls for the boys, so they were probably like, oh, okay, so maybe we need to keep some girls because these boys really do need to, they gotta have someone to date.
Yeah. An interesting thing that's just miscellaneous is a problem behavior in adoptees. You can go look this up. It's in the Atlantic called the adoption paradox. And I think it might be it's just a matter of kids that are still young having to adjust. So even though you know that these are great families, on average, these are great loving families that these kids are coming into. There's been some measurements at kindergarten and then first grade how they're not doing as well behaviorally, and they're not doing as well academically. This is a long-term study of 19,000 students that began in 1998. Math skills weren't as high. Well, it might just be that bond was just disrupted, or it was never formed, and they still got to get that form going with their regular parents. I'd like to see what that really shows after, forget kindergarten, first grade, maybe 6 years later. Maybe in their fifth grade, sixth grade. Open versus closed adoptions. I did not look very much into this, but I'm going to give you the nightmare story that I did hear. It's exactly what you said. You're trying to do I think you're at least leaning on that. You're trying to do an open adoption. You believe that you want that poor young biological mom who has agreed to this. You want them to be a part of it. You want them to consent. You want them to potentially be able to see that child later. But the issue becomes some adopted parents have gone through 3 and 4 and 5 attempts.
Yeah.
Where either the kid is young and playing them. I'm not trying to blame but I'm just saying factually. Or they just really do genuinely think they're going to they're going to give away their kid, and then they change their mind.
Yeah, I had a friend that did that. The mom was a young mom. She didn't want the kid, so they went through the whole adoption. The whole process. It wasn't her; it was her mom. Yeah. Her mom decided after she got a little bit closer, she was like, "No, I'm going to take the baby."
Yeah.
And they had already adopted. The baby was already born, and then the mom decided, "No, I want it," so they had to go fight. Well, then what they said was, "Okay, we will allow you to see that, we'll allow you to be a part of the child's life." And then it just got out of control. So then they had to say, you know what? No, you can't, because we're the parents. This is our child. And the daughter ended up having another baby, and they no longer cared about this little boy anymore.
So I'm glad that this is the option, but this is where I put opinions, but we don't have a lot of time, so I don't want to do it. But in my opinion, I would be very, very wary of an open adoption.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that.
I'm glad that some people are using that choice and that it's there.
Right.
But if I were an adoptive parent, I wouldn't want to have that extra. I wouldn't want to have that extra dynamic. And it's and now I am open to, because I'm open to when that child is 15 to 18, when they feel like looking for their biological parents, have at it.
Right.
I hope by then that bond is secure enough. And besides that, I'm their dad at that point anyway, so it doesn't matter. Right. So you just have to, and hopefully you've done right, and they don't want to leave their dad, for the family. Hopefully it's at least that great, wonderful benefit of having 4 parents instead of 2.
Right.
Because that's awesome. But yeah, I'm really wary of that. I don't think I'd like it at all. I don't think I'd lean toward it.
I think it's actually, and this has nothing to do with adoption, but when you marry someone with a child that they've got their mom and dad from one family. Now they've got their mom and dad in another family. And if you four don't get along, then it's hard. All right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's already hard.
You're talking
because
parental.
we're talking
the parental.
The parents or mom and dad are still in the picture. Now you've got stepmom, stepdad. Mm-hmm. If you can't get along, it's hard. I can't imagine if it's the actual biological family doesn't have custody of their own kid.
It might be great, but you just bring it in.
How, if you don't get along with them, how it would be a bad thing. It would have to be like, you have to
worry about messy divorces, if you will. It's not a divorce,
right,
but
messy divorce syndrome. You could meet someone and it could totally work out.
Yeah.
I see how, step parents, and
I think parenting is tough enough.
I mean, yeah, it's very hard, and it depends on how many kids you have, and it depends on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. It just gets really messy.
So you're kind of the same place as me. Another interesting thing somebody said around this idea of the nightmare stories where they think but you're trying to keep that relationship, and then they change their mind. The biological mom or parents change their mind. Is because that sometimes these young women or even teenagers who don't think they're ready to support a child, then all of a sudden they're getting psychological support,
right?
Which they maybe weren't getting, and then sometimes as the more mature couple that's ready to take on this child, and you're talking with them all the time. You're psychologically supporting them, and that's great, but just understand that could be one of the reasons they change their mind. Open versus closed records. I looked at this very briefly. As of late 2019, about 26 states had open adoption records for all or some years of birth.
Right.
Kansas had open records. Missouri had some weird little thing that I wasn't certain of. But it was more limited. But it's interesting. Some states have open records only for adoptions for people adopted before a certain year. So you might think like, okay, well, starting at this year, we reformed, and anybody sometimes it's before. It's like, well, you can have those records if they're old enough, right? So interestingly, even up in Iowa, it has to be before 1941. I mean, that's someone who's like 70-something now, almost 80.
Yeah.
In Maryland, it had to be before 47, Massachusetts before 74. And several have changed recently, and some with big populations. New York changed recently, just January this year, to more open, I should say. Right. And so did New Jersey, and so did Pennsylvania. And some of them, two of them have something where, even though it's open record for the person who is involved, the adoptee, that parent, because they may have given up that child under a certain situation, and what their understanding of the law was, they can have a option to veto that information being shared.
Gotcha.
Which I think is fine.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. It's like, I feel bad enough about this already, and what's done is done, and I had my own kids since so much of life has passed.
Right.
I just don't, if they're in a good place that they're searching for me, then great. But it's not my business anymore, and I don't want it to be my business. I'm okay with that.
Well, but my thing is if you are a habitual person who gives your child up for adoption, how do you know that those children do not end up meeting in life sometime? Like that's like my biggest thing is if I've given, let's say that I've, given up 3 children. So, and they were all young. So they're all like 2, 4, and 6, and they go off and they're adopted in different families. A lot of these people that I have found, they are like 5 blocks from their family. So my friend Robin, her husband Steve, one of my really good friends, was adopted, and they did the test.
People are awesome.
They did the test. So they did one of those genetic tests, and he found his family, and he reached out and actually got a hold of one of his half brothers. And found out that there was kind of a family feud The dad, and I could totally be wrong, and if I am wrong, and you're listening to this, Robin, let me know, but I don't believe the dad knew that Steve was even born.
Wow.
Like, so the mom had gotten pregnant, and I don't think he knew. I could be wrong, but I'm for some reason I'm thinking that he did not know about Steve. Anyway, Steve's got a great family in Denver, but they did all get to meet last year. They went to a Royals game. They all came in and they got to meet, and now they're communicating. But I mean, he's in his 40s. He was not looking for a new family. He's got his family. He's got his sister and his mom and his grandma and and all those people. That's not what it was. It was just he felt there was something missing. And so they did the tests, and they found the one match of whatever, and they reached out, and it was a little bit of a process, but they all look alike. It's hilarious.
I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it that way. Like, I had way back in my college age. I went to the Navy first, so that.
But you have to remember, he did not find his mom. It was not. This is just his dad. I don't know about his mom. His mom would have been the only one on the records if the dad hadn't been anything. There'd have been no way of finding a dad that didn't know or was on was not involved at all.
Right.
So, I mean, you wouldn't have found him because he didn't even know he had a dad. I mean, he didn't even know he had a son. So there's no other way.
I know. I'm just saying
through DNA.
You can totally do it. I'm just saying here's what I did and my approach.
Right.
Just being it's a personality difference. In college, I went to the Navy first, so this is, mid to later 20s because I was in the Navy for a while, and then I didn't go to college. It was the later years in college. I did the 5-year plan. And one of my topics was a research topic, and this is before everybody made all the extra information on people as subscription-based, so you could go do a lot of the, 411 or whatever it would be. And if you did enough of those little searches, you could piece a lot of stuff together before Ancestry had really brought that in. And so I knew basically where my biological family was.
Right.
And so I knew if I just asked a few of those people, I would definitely get to my direct family. I mean, I knew where my biological family grew up. It was all and lived. It was all in one little area.
Right.
Very easy. But I just still didn't try. It's like I could right now, and that was my conclusion. Here's all my information. And then years later, I just happened to Google my full name, and a Cyber Pages search came up, and it was like the second thing on the Google result. There's a lot of people with more people than you'd think with my name.
Right.
And so it was weird to see something that was they gave enough information looking for brother, and the information they gave, I'm like, well, they're looking for me. And so at that point, I'm like, 2 days later, I found him, and I'm talking to him on the phone. But I wouldn't, I may not have ever, I don't know. I don't know when I would have reached out. But once I knew that they were reaching out for me, I was fine with it. So that was my...
How many siblings do you have, like biological siblings?
I would have had like 5, but only 2 are still living. So it is what it is when you get that connection to your friend Steve. It's like some of them are going to be close, and some of them are going to be just kind of like regular family. It's like you don't really see them very much, and that includes your siblings.
Yeah, I mean they don't live here. I mean they travel in here.
And the other thing is, she's found me a half sister.
Oh.
So we may have had dalliances, or we clearly did have dalliances. By my dad, who was really good looking. I can't explain what happened. I don't know. Anyway, so this is a guy. If he wanted to do dalliances, he could do dalliances, and he did. So I'm also aware, but I haven't got to visit her. So it's more like that. She's out west and has never had time. So the other thing I want to say about these records is that in some cases, what you'll get is like you have the right to the birth certificate with the full name. And in other cases, you have the right to just any number, kind of the collection of adoption documents.
Right.
And in my case, what was interesting, I think I was adopted in Missouri. And the birth certificate, which I think this is great, honestly, because it's a closed state. My parents got to be my parents on the birth certificate once they adopted me.
Oh.
You know, so it says their mom and dad on my birth certificate. And I know that sounds a little bit of 1984 propaganda, but I think it's cool.
Yeah,
you know, so,
I think it's cool too.
So now we talked about different media, but I found these. Listen, Truth Robot found out that his tier algorithm was working well today.
Aww.
Can I tell you this? Because we talked about media where they talk about adoption. Well, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, and this is what we're finishing with, because I didn't want to tell people early, because then they'd go watch those and start crying and watch the next one, and then they wouldn't listen to the rest of our podcast.
Right.
But some of the most touching videos you will ever see are these YouTube videos, and there's more than one kind. Sometimes it's where the foster parents, or where the parents who maybe had the kid for the summer, but they had to go back to their country, and now they're telling them the news, and it's being on video that they're going to be adopted. And,
right.
you know, you talk about genuine responses. But there's another kind, too, where it's that a stepdaughter kind of has a reveal where they've got the paperwork, and they want their stepdad, who has been as much of a dad to adopt them. And then you get, you know, those reactions from dad who loves them and has been their dad for all practical purposes. Being the step parent is always a little weird. It's like, I'm not trying to step on toes. I'm supposed to be your parent, kinda, but not really your parent. And it's such an interesting dynamic. Like, how do you deal with that? And if you tromp through that and have that kid really, really like and adore and respect you, that's a pretty good endeavor. It's not always easy. So some of these videos are that. So I'm just going to name off a few that were very touching. Not all these are because I actually have about 15 here. We're probably not going to get to all of them.
You can put them in this show.
Yeah.
Put them in the thing.
Paige Zazolka. I mean, while you're listening, you just probably put it on another tab. I'm giving these even the title, but now I'm not absolutely sure if I put it in quotes every time as a title. So Paige, Paige, Zezulka, adoption video, Zezulka. Meredith's big surprise, we're adopting you. Look up that. Haley's adoption party video. Miller learns he is getting adopted. This is one of those where he was overseas and it took a while. You know, I mean, he was like there for the whole summer. This is the most. So even though he's overseas, I believe this is the one where his name is Miller. And back home, this is just a little, you know, a household of Rugrats. And all of them love this kid. Like, they're just little blonde kids, and as little as like 1.5. And they got this video where, you know, it might be this next one, but one of these is where they show him leaving at the airport, and you know, the little one, he kneels down for the little one gives him a hug, and then he just starts crying.
Aww.
And then you know, the mom for the summer, you know, came over and says it'll be okay, and then of course they decide then and there, they just don't get a chance to tell him, so you get to see the reveal video of when he finds out over in his home country, and they say 2 semanas, just 2 weeks, you're gonna be here in 2 weeks. Kids surprise their parents with adoption papers 2018 compilation is a great one in that you can kind of go find some of the better ones.
Right.
It doesn't have all the emotional video, it just shows like 20-30 seconds, gives a story. Top 10 kids' reactions to being adopted. Tearful moment, adoptive family reunites after 3-year wait. Imagine. So, Meet Me on the Bridge. This is really good. It's 26 minutes. And it's about a Chinese... this is actually where she's like 20 now, but it was... well, no, that made sense. It is what made sense. A female that was adopted from China. And it's just a nice little 26 minutes where they talk to the Chinese parents, and they're genuinely missed her, and they had to give her away because of the China policy.
Right.
I mean, it's literally, where do we hide her? because our neighbors are going to know.
Right.
And it's like, well, we are hoping to give them to somebody. But is that something
you could do that would be like more of the open one. They're in China. Let's send them some pictures.
Yeah, but at the time.
But I'm saying like, like I could see that if it's like if it's kind of
that open would make sense. Because they wouldn't be getting in the way. That's really good. Meet Me on the Bridge, Discovering the Truth About My Parents After 20 Years. I watched that whole thing. It says full film BBC stories. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I watched one, and it was a little boy, and they gave him this package, and he opened it up, and he pulls out this piece of paper, and he looks at it, and he looks at him, and he looks at the paper again, and he looks at him, and they were like, you're going to be part of the family. And he looks at it, and he just starts to cry, and he hugs it. And it was an African American. I don't know which ethnic, I don't know where he was from, but it was like a white family. Yep. And they had other kids that were sitting around, and they were like this, you're going to be our brother. And I was just like bawling, and I don't really cry. Yep. So I think those are
3-year-old
awesome.
in foster care gets a family for Christmas. This is actually the one where it said, heartwarming moment, orphan finds out U.S. family wants to adopt him, and then the follow-up, Colombian orphan finally reunited with adopted family. The sweetest adoption surprise you've ever seen. Mother adopts 3 teen boys from foster care. That is a great one because it's all 3 boys being old enough now to really verbalize how important that was for them.
Right.
How important that was to get a sense
that's awesome.
to get a sense of self and stuff. And then thankful teenage boy gives sweet speech during adoption. This is in the court.
Right.
And this is a special day. So sometimes if the kids are old enough, let's get dressed. We're going to go to the courthouse. And they're across on a nice wooden table, and the judge is over there. She's going to say yes, right?
Right.
But you still just have to go through the formalities and make a little bit of an event. So parents are on the other side. Adoptee is set next to him. And you kind of ask kind of the formal question, well, what do you think, Tyler, or whatever his name is? And he goes, you know what? I think it'd be a great idea. I really love these parents. And then he just keeps going with these little... It's great. And then another one, this is about 15 to 20 minutes, and it's probably, I'm going to say underrated, like some movie you don't know about. But look up Our Adoption Story on a channel. The guy's name is just Doug Wilson. It's like if you put up one, it's just Kim Schultz's channel. And they bring on these 2 young black girls, and I believe they're sisters. But he said it's just a very neat compilation of kind of as they got a little bit better. Because you can imagine if you've been carted around in the situation, you don't even know who to attach to. And you don't even know your kid, and you have that instinct to want to attach. But it doesn't very much work very well if you've just... I'm not blaming any parents for this. I'm just saying once that's happened, it's back and forth. And just their journey of kind of being, we adopted them, we loved their smiles, but you could tell it was rough at first.
Right.
It was rough. And then we eventually saw them slowly transform into, feeling that security and all that. So that was also very good. So that's really it. I know I had a lot of stuff, but I knew it was basically just going down the list, so it wouldn't necessarily take long outside of just discussing it.
Adoption, because somebody's going to be listening to this, and they're going to be like, you guys just made it sound like it was all,
that's
awesome.
It. Some of those videos don't, and that's one of the things they loved about This Is Us, because they talk about it's not easy.
No, it's not easy. There are a lot of children that are in the foster care system that they have been abused. They do have a detachment disorder because they've been so long, and they go from place to place, and then at first they start attaching, and then they get pulled away, and
some of them respond because they don't know how to respond because they think they're going to be abandoned,
right?
When they may not be, and then they're angry.
These kids don't know. So there's a lot of problems. So, when you're thinking about adoption, it's a very serious thing that you have to be like, okay, it's not like going out and getting a dog. Because I know a lot of people, they get dogs and they're like, oh, and then you see them on Facebook, got to get rid of the dog. You can't because this and that. Or
remember,
we just had a baby and can't do it. That's not the way this is.
This child has potentially been broken before. And you don't want to be the person who adds another layer to that.
And I can tell you that someone as young as the age of 2 and 3 could have been severely abused in this whole entire system. Kids are not in foster care because their life was perfect. Right. They're in foster care. They could have had a perfect life, and their parents could have both been killed, and there was absolutely no family around that could take them. But that's low percentage. Yeah, a lot of these kids have been removed from a bad situation. Some of them, it hasn't been a bad situation. It was more of the parent putting them in harm, possibly. And that's, we're talking foster care there. Not talking about just, the baby getting pregnant and adopting the baby. So I want people to understand, because there was a YouTuber that went on and made a huge deal about wanting to adopt a child, and they wanted to have one with special needs. And, so many things that we watch, I am desensitized to really any of these good stories, because I always figure, what's your game plan? What are you doing this for? And they basically adopted this kid, made a huge deal out of it, and then gave it back. They were like, yeah, we can't do this.
Yeah.
First of all, if it's not a good situation, then you need to fix it, because you can't be forced to do something if you're going to end up harming a child and not being there for the child. That child deserves someone that can do it. But they have to remember that children are a lot of work. A lot of work. And yes, like you said, when you see that child, if your heart is really in and wanting a child, but if there's an ulterior motive behind taking a kid, like a lot of kids, you hear a lot of stories in foster care that all they want to do is get that check, and they're putting all these kids in there and stuff like that.
And I didn't cover, I kind of wanted to cover, but between content and too much time, this distinction of, I don't think when I grew up there was I'm going to say only to describe, because I know it doesn't necessarily mean, a serial foster parent.
Right.
Where it's just boom, 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 and maybe many at a time. I feel like you could probably have 2 or 3 or 4, but I'm not. So, and with the financial incentive. So I didn't cover that, and that's kind of awkward, and I just didn't know if I wanted to, and I also just didn't get to it. And then 2, this, to your point, I didn't know about this until you mentioned it the other day, and then I saw it as I was looking up these videos of this YouTubers who are into adoption and therefore talking about their kids and family life.
Right.
And that's not necessarily disingenuous, but it's just like, to be putting out just your regular family life is always a little weird. That's why I've never even liked those reality shows that are about families instead of about their work. I've always thought it was weird.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, being as famous as I am, and the spotlight constantly being on me, I mean, I can't go anywhere. We went for our meeting, and do I not know people? I mean, I'm pretty flippin' famous in Topeka, Kansas.
Right.
And when I go to other places, I tell them how famous I am, and they just roll with it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, with the podcast, I mean, we've got tons of listeners. They don't get to view it.
Just looked around for a second.
We have tons of listeners that have never really met us, and we hope that they like our personality. But I liked that you picked this topic, because this was a personal one for you. I've got friends that have adopted. I know kids. I have my daughter, and I had home daycare, and I probably had about 80 kids that I have raised in my life. Almost, those are 9 hours a day, 5 days a week. Then they go home on the weekends. I had a lot of kids in my life. I love kids. And I had my little Colton when he was 3 years old. Now he's like 9, so he doesn't want to have really anything to do with his little Kimmy anymore.
Excuse me.
I've got my friend's son. I told him when he came over, I said, hey, why don't you come over like on a Friday night and we'll just watch cartoons, make a pizza, because I love kids. But I don't want them with me nonstop anymore. I love my life. Now, I think if I would have found someone that wanted to settle down and, if they have their kids, that's great. Because I love kids.
Because you know how to deal with them. So.
I am awesome with kids, but I feel as if, like, nowadays generations, people aren't having children or even thinking about children until after the age of 30. I had my daughter at 24, which at my age was old. Like, people started having kids when I was in school back in the 80s. Kids were being at 20, 21. That was your average age of doing it. Unlike the 14 and 15 back in, 1922 or 33 or 40, little house in the prairie when they go get married at 14. So we kind of got up, and ages are getting up to where 30, 35 years old. And a lot of these professional women, adopting just fits their schedule so much better because they don't have they're just kind of like they're older, and the pregnancy part, some of them could get pregnant, but then it doesn't really fit because that's they've got other stuff they have to do. You've got movie stars that don't have 9 months to be pregnant and then have to lose the weight to do their stuff. And so back before I got to be really smart, you're just kind of like, how selfish of you. And now I'm thinking, there are so many kids in this world that could use a home.
And that's what, some
ones,
people, that it's like, well, because the one I said where she brought on 3 teens, well, just think what they've been through.
Right.
You could consider, now you're going to have to understand the match better. I don't know, with non-foster care, and maybe even with foster care, you can probably visit with them many times to get some better sense if you can take on a 10-year-old, because a 10-year-old is a little bit more baked, if you will, as far as how they respond to stressful situations. But man, if you could do that, I mean, how great is that? Because you're their parents for the rest of your life till you die. Right. So yes, you weren't for the first 10. Right. But you're for their next, as long as you live, 50 years.
So what I need to do is find myself like 5 or 6 like 17 or 18-year-olds so that I can adopt them for a year and then push them off to college, and then I can have my big family gatherings.
There you go. Like that one gal, I mean, she adopted these boys were, like I think 13, 14, 15 or something like that. So they really only had that 3 to 5 years of high school, but it really helped them,
oh my gosh, it does.
Yeah, and so that's cool to me. I
think it's really cool. So there are numbers, on adoption, even foster care. They really need a lot of parents who are willing to do the foster care. I mean, foster care is something that, and
it's a good avenue to...
Once again, my schedule doesn't allow me to do anything like that because I am nonstop going. And if I had a different career and I didn't want to be selfish, like I said, I've already raised 80 kids. Mm-hmm. That would be something that I would definitely do because kids,
foster is single, that would be even harder. It's like, well, geez, why would I bring on... It's one thing if you've got a couple,
that's what I'm saying.
Dealing with them.
I like to do my own stuff, and I'm kind of, and I'm just old now. Like, I'm done. But I literally raised, we have to say literally at least 3 times. Okay. I've literally raised, about 80 kids that for 10 years, having 6 to 10 kids at all times. And I've got a great, I love it, but I actually like the little kids. Like, I like the 3 to 7-year-olds. They're so much fun because you can watch the cartoons. They love you. They don't want to argue with you. And then they start getting like, video games and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, go check out we'll put on, I'm sure that Tyson has his little list. Once I get this uploaded on. He can put his. You can put some more information on it.
And this since I started with a big outline, I can knock it down to a summary.
We kind of have it.
Summary outline.
You don't have to.
Easily.
You don't have to. It doesn't have to be by time, but at least you can you'll know what you talked about. And then next week we're normal, and then the next week I got to try to push it in. We might have to do 2, or we might have to do 1 through Zoom. I'll be in Dallas. I go on the 16th to Dallas. Finally, I get a vacation. But I am going to be bringing my stuff. I wasn't going to bring my stuff, and I thought, I better do it because I might try to get some interviews down there. So make sure you go online if you have ever thought about it. Even the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program. That's something you should do.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's honestly something you could do. If you really wanted to, find somebody to go do something with, or Big Brothers and Big Sisters. That's a really good program. There's so many good programs out there. There's so many kids in our society that need a good role model.
And know, once they have it and they know that it's supposed to be a relationship of respect, it's kind of interesting because you're not their parent, so they don't have to do that whole, you don't even know. I mean, sometimes, and you know very well from daycare, the difference between not being the parent and therefore having a different kind of a reference of authority means they act differently around you.
Oh, yeah.
And then they do even when they go home. So when they know, hey, this is the guy that's, trying to help me out, they might treat it differently. Exactly. I can tell you that I do get along well with my nephews, and always have. So, maybe that would be an avenue.
Yeah, that'd be just something fun. All right, guys. Well, we thank you so much for giving us your time and appreciate all of our listeners. And we're excited that we keep doing our amazing shows. And I'm really excited that we have multiple countries. We've got like 5 different countries. We've got multiple states. It's
should I try to do an accent off one of them?
Well, we've got New Zealand, we've got China, we've got Australia.
I can't do that.
Okay, well then you just failed.
Although I can accidentally go to about 3 or 4 of those, starting at 1. Like if I try to do just a regular proper British before you know what I'm doing, an Australian accent. And then New Zealand. I just kind of around the world accent.
Around the world. All right, so make sure you go to Facebook and you join our group, Kimology 411. And our episode numbers are at the beginning or you can see them on your phone or your however you're listening to us. And go comment if you have, if you are adopted, if you have adopted, anything like that. We'd love to hear back from you guys. Send us a message if you have any other stories that you'd like to share. And if you haven't already joined, please join the group. Thanks, Tyson, for helping make Kimology 411 so awesome.
Yeah, it was fun to come up with a topic. Now you get to do 52 more before I come up with Oh, she didn't swing anything. Holy
yeah. No, I'm okay. I mean, I get the fact that I am the brains behind.
Yeah, really.
The topics.
I'm just like
you're the researcher. You're the researcher. Every time I have something I need to research, I'm just like I just hand it to him. I'm like this. Check this out for me.
And I'm like, it's like someone throwing a stick to a dog. Okay.
I really have to say in 10 pages or less.
Yeah, you probably do need to say that.
Because it could get
deep. If you can ask me a direct question, I can usually get back with it with a fairly... but otherwise, it could be long.
Today I asked him a question. He's like, I can't do it now. I have all this work to do. And I was like, how dare you work at work?
and then you give me the question or you give me a little bit more, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to look into this now.
And I did that on purpose. I was like, oh.
You just wanted to see me go? It's like, I'm going to wind him up and put him on the floor just to watch him go.
It'd be like this. Work really fast. It'd be like, this is the worst work you've ever done. Oh, sorry, but I had a second project that was way more important.
Really important.
Have you heard of Kimology 411? She had a question. I know, because I was like, should I send it now or later? I'm sending it now because I knew you looked at it like this.
Yeah. But I still want to look up those answers, right?
Yeah,
you can tell like it's inherent in me. Well, I do want to find out.
I gotta
find it.
Which makes it perfect for me because I got a lot of ideas. I just don't have time to figure it out. But
sometimes even chemology needs to be clarified a little bit with specific stuff. So I'm good for that.
Well, you know what? I try not to. I don't want to give out bad information. My daughter was like, why would I listen to your podcast if you're just giving your opinion? I don't need your opinion. I can find the facts on the internet. And I'm like, but facts aren't as funny as some of my stuff.
Facts aren't as funny, and we're going to focus you a little bit more than some other places do.
Right, and I'm pretty right. I've only been wrong a couple times.
Listen,
so
you're pretty right, and then I'm backing you up. I'm not sure. Those are two levels of secure rightness right there.
Exactly. Yeah. Without actually physically
Absolutely.
being there. Sure. All right, guys. I guess we're done. We went long. Oh, here, you know what? I was watching Joe Rogan. I was listening to his. I pulled up with Elon
Musk.
No. I'm not gonna remember what his name is. Kevin Hart. And I started watching it, and it was like 2 hours long. And I got it like 45 minutes, and I stopped it because I really want to watch it. And I was like, if Joe Rogan can do 2-hour podcasts, so can we.
Well, because even just seeing, I told you I'd barely watched it. It's, some of it is just kind of chilling. Some of the Joe Rogan thing is just kind of chilling.
Right.
Which he can do both in tone and in time. Because even like my Coast to Coast, which I love, you still know you got this guy for an hour, which is really 43 minutes. And you got... Joe's like, whatever. I mean, we'll take whatever.
That's right, and that's what we do here. I try to keep it. I wanted it to be an hour, but then we just put so much stuff in here, and I figured that people are smart enough how to stop and start. You can listen to it whenever you want, especially if we get the outlines and stuff in there. You can kind of read through it if you want to listen to it. Plus, I mean, we're freaking awesome, so why would you want to miss the end part? The end part's always usually the best part of the whole podcast. You just want to kind of go right to the end and find out what kind of nonsense we have to say. Because there's always something.
Hey, I look up things, and then I have so much stuff. I have so much BS in me. You know why my eyes aren't brown? Because I'm constantly releasing it.
Exactly.
And that's why they stay blue.
That's right. That's right. That's right. It's
there's always more where that came from.
This is my thing. Oh, and also, I know what we forgot to do.
Uh-oh.
Dang it.
What?
So
Uh-oh.
We were supposed to insert, I have a superstar segment. I've got a superstar segment that we were supposed to insert in here, and I just totally forgot because I'm not recording it till Monday. So I am going to add Mondays to next show, and then I'll put my next superstar to the next show. So that's fine.
Okay.
So you guys need to also realize we have a couple superstar segments, and I am now going to probably be doing at least maybe one a week. For my superstar segments, and my first one is going to be for my friend who lives in New York. I have my other friend that's going to be in Utah, and then I will have one from my friends in Dallas. So those will be the next 3 that I do. So I'm going to start scheduling those. I'll be doing one a week. I mean, look at me. I'm
back to the national traveler that you are.
Yeah. So. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, we'll talk to you soon, and make sure to keep taking all of your adventures. Bye-bye.